So what niche should you be looking to get into moving into 2019? Well, let's just go ahead and hop right into my computer and find out. All right, so we're just gonna go ahead and peel back the curtain and go ahead and show you what the hottest niche in e-commerce is right now. And as you can see, it is the competitive mooing niche. So you can see here, this 10-year-old kid beat out 74 other cow wannabes in a dramatic 4-person moo off. So this is a really passionate niche. So I think it's time to start pulling out the cow gear and going ahead and getting into this niche. So don't say I didn't warn you when you see a bunch of other people making money off of this niche. So anyway, let's go ahead and get into the video. So in this video, I'm going to be showing you how you can go ahead and pick solid niches moving into 2019. So before we get into it, if you haven't already, go ahead and join our Facebook group. The link's in the description. Everyone that joins the Facebook group gets a free list of 6 products that did $100,000+ in sales in 2018, and also gets a free download of 25 evergreen e-commerce niches. So if you're struggling to pick a niche to get into, that list will help you out. So let's go ahead and discuss niche selection. So we're going to be going over a couple things right here. So the first thing is we're going to draw a big red circle here. So my drawing's not very good with the mouse, as evident. This definitely doesn't look like a circle, but we're going to go with it. So we're going to draw the big red circle and a little red one right here. So this circle right here is going to represent niches that are too broad. And then this little circle is going to represent niches that are too narrow. And then what we're aiming for right here is the sweet spot here in the middle. So right here is just right. So whenever you're going out there and selecting niches, this is the area you're going to want to shoot for. So we're going to go ahead and get into a couple examples of broad and narrow and then just right, just so I can further elaborate this and you can fully understand what I'm talking about. So whenever you're choosing to get into a niche, you want to try and figure out whether this niche is really broad, whether it's really narrow, or whether it's right in that sweet spot here in the middle. And we're not talking about anything to do with general stores in this video. This is only for niches, so just get that out of your head. So quick example of a super broad niche. Let's just go ahead and go with, say, fashion and then clothing, because a lot of people like to get into the fashion niche. Now, one example is just a store that sells nothing but fashion, just general clothing, stuff like that. And this is going to be pretty terrible because right out of the gate, you are competing with juggernauts such as Macy's, and you're just not going to beat them. So this is definitely too broad. A couple other easy examples. We have electronics. Just general electronics is definitely way too broad. You're out there competing with Best Buy, so good luck with that. Let's go ahead and just do a couple more. So just general outdoors. So in this scenario, you're competing with Gander Mountain, so good luck. And then another one is general sports, so you're out there competing with Dick's. So overlying theme here is that all of these niches are too broad and you're going out there trying to go ahead and compete with these juggernaut brands that are already established, and you're just not going to be able to do that. So the main downside with broad niches is that it's hard to find customers, because and the reason for this, we're just going to do C here. I know you probably can't read this anyways. So the reason for this is because think about all the people that are interested in clothing. Well, pretty much everyone I know wears clothes. So that's a hell of a lot of people that are interested in clothing. So it's going to take a massive ad budget to sort through all the people that like clothing, which is pretty much everyone, to narrow it down to the certain people that like whatever clothing you're selling on your general clothing store. So the broader your niche is, this equals the more ad budget you're going to need. So the smaller your budget is, the more narrow you want to go as a general rule. Now, don't take this overboard and start selling to competitive movers, but as a general rule of thumb, the less budget you have, the more narrow you want to be, because it's going to be easier to find your customers, because you're not going to be sorting through hundreds of millions of people to try and find customers. And then the other issue with super broad stores is going to be lower conversions. And this is because, like I said, in each one of these 4 examples, there are huge brand authorities in this niche, and the odds of you being able to establish that type of brand authority as well, to have an equivalent brand next to, let's say, like Macy's or something, is just pretty much next to impossible without hundreds of millions worth of ad budget, because all these companies, these juggernauts in these niches, they have hundreds of millions worth of budget to spend on advertising, so the odds of you establishing the same level of branding as them is pretty much impossible. So that's the issue with niches that are too broad. So now we're going to go ahead and move to the other extreme, which is narrow niches. So let's say, what's a couple examples of these? So within the clothing niche, let's say you literally created a store and all you were selling, I'm not even going to be able to write this in here, is, you can't even read that. So 38 millimeter watches, we'll just go, yeah, that definitely says watches. So 38 millimeter watches would definitely be something that is a little bit too narrow to base an entire store around, because the sector of the market that's in the market for 38 millimeter watches specifically is going to be very, very small. So there's not going to be too much room for expansion, too much room for scaling. The main issue with narrow niches is that there is not enough customers. So another example would be if we go to, like, let's say, go within sports, could be selling tennis balls. That's just a little bit too narrow. Not saying it can't work. The thing is, narrow can work, but you're leaving a lot of money on the table. And let's say one more, we'll go with outdoors, hunting knives. At this point, I don't know why I'm still writing, because there's no way anyone could read this, but we'll just keep going with it. So as you can see, the difference between broad and narrow is, at least in narrow, you actually stand a chance. So in narrow, if you're too narrow, money can actually be made over here. But the thing is, the niche is so small that there's not going to be much room for scaling, expansion, or anything like that. So you don't want to get too narrow either, but if you had to choose between the two, going too narrow would be more efficient than going too broad, because being broad, like I said, you're competing with brands that you just have no chance against. So now let's go ahead and jump into this section right here, which is where you want to be when you're selecting a niche. So we're going to stick with the examples we've been doing here. So let's say, what would be a good example of a good niche within the fashion or clothing industry? So we could go with, let's say, men's workout gear. Why is this a good niche? Well, it's targeted, but it's not so narrowed down to where there's not a lot of people within the niche. So men's workout gear, obviously we're targeting one gender, so just men, and then we're targeting only men that work out. So we've narrowed it down a lot, but there's still a good amount of people in the world that are men that work out. So our niche is not too broad, but it's not too narrow, so it's right in that sweet spot. So it's small, it's narrow enough to where our advertising is going to be targeted, and we won't have to spend thousands of dollars to find our customers, but it's also broad enough to where there's room for expansion, brandability, and scaling. So what's another example? So instead of going into the broad outdoor niche or the super narrow hunting knives niche, you could go in the center and go with camping. So now we're just going after people that are only interested in camping, but we're not going after the entire outdoors market, but we're also not limiting ourselves to just hunting knives. So at this point, you should be starting to pick up on the trend here to where how we can go ahead and effectively pick something in the middle. So one more example would be in electronics, we could just go with gaming equipment. So we could sell things like headsets, keyboards, and mice. And that's a lot more efficient than going out there and trying to compete with Best Buy. Because one of the biggest advantages of a niche store is your customer is going to feel right at home on your site. So if someone's really interested in gaming and they land on a store that's not only selling gaming stuff, but pretty much every other electronic in existence, they're not going to really feel like that store is tailor-made for them. And the thing is, stores like Best Buy can get away with that because they're a huge brand name and everyone knows who they are. But your store, no one knows who the hell you are. So the odds of you being able to get away with that is a lot slimmer, which is why general stores typically only work when you sell super, super hot trending products. That's really the only point of general stores, is to sell the ridiculously hot trending products. It doesn't really work for more moderately trending normal products. So right here in the middle, if somebody lands on your store and they're into gaming and you're only selling gaming equipment, they're going to feel a lot more comfortable from your store. They're going to be like, well, this store specifically specializes in gaming equipment, so they have me in mind. They're curating their products just for people like me, so I feel more comfortable buying from them. Yet it's still big enough to where the gaming market is still large enough to where you can actually scale up and build a brand within this niche. So whenever you're moving forward selecting your niches, try and keep this little chart here in mind, this terrible looking chart of a bunch of scribble. Go ahead and keep this in mind. You want to try and be as close to the middle as possible. But like I said, if you have to err towards one side or the other, it would be better to be a little bit on the narrow side, because the broader you get, the steeper the competition is, the more ad budget you're going to need to go ahead and find your customers within that large audience. So try and stick as close to the middle as possible. And if you like videos like this, give the video a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel for more content, and I'll see you guys in the next one.